I'm going to start with a story. This happened to me in 9th grade, and in Australia, 9th grade is the middle of high school. So it's started 7th grade, go all the way to 12th grade. So 9th grade is kind of this odd time. So we went to camp, and buses pulled up, and the teachers told us to get into groups of 8 to go into the cabins because there were 8 beds. Now, you can imagine what a crazy moment that must have been. Everybody frantically trying to get into their groups. If you could imagine now trying to get into the group of 8 that you want to sleep in a cabin with for a week, it would be nuts. And it was. And I saw my group of friends getting together, the people that I spent most of the time with at school. Then I had an idea. I saw a group of cool kids getting together. Now, most of you are not going to believe that I was ever uncool, but that's okay, just go with it for a minute. Thank you for the one person that laughed. And this was an opportunity. I thought, man, if I could get into a cabin with those cool kids, I would be the cool kid for the rest of school. And that was pretty tempting. So I went straight over there, got brave, and thought, okay, I'm going to talk to these people who don't know I exist. And they let me into the cabin, like magic. And so went into the cabin, spent the first day at camp doing all the first day at camp things that you do, learning the rules, going on a tour, all of that sort of stuff. And that night, my little dream backfired big time. So it turned out that there were actually 9 people in our group, so we had to get an extra mattress in the cabin. And put it on the floor in the middle. And you can imagine who got to sleep on that mattress. This guy, right? So that night, teachers were all off in their cabins doing whatever teachers do at camp at night time. That's all I'm going to say. And one of these kids decided he had a great target on the floor, so he started making fun of me, calling me names, and then had the great idea of starting to spit on me. Because he was up... Oh, that wasn't supposed to be funny. He was up in a top bunk and started rolling up pieces of paper in his mouth and started spitting them on me. And me, being the one that was not part of this group at all, had virtually nothing I could do. I asked him to stop, he didn't, he laughed at me. Somebody else joined in. Some of the other guys were laughing, some of them did nothing at all. Just watched. And I tell you this story not to get sympathy or get laughed at, depending on your perspective. But I tell you because I want to use this story as a frame of reference for what I'm going to talk about. So, the first thing I want to say to you is something that adults have probably never said to you before, and that is the bullying works. You guys all know it, but I'm sure you've had person after person after person never telling you that, telling you everything else about bullying except for that. This is a problem that it works, because everyone pretends that it doesn't, and that it should be just something that everybody should want to get rid of. The fact is, it works, and it works by making people who bully more popular. Research has been done last year in a number of different middle schools and high schools where someone would come into the room, and I could do it right now, and ask everyone to write down top 3 most popular people in the grade or the school. And the people that got the most votes were the people that did most of the bullying. And I'm sure that doesn't surprise any of you guys. Now, if I asked you to write down a list of the 3 people that you liked the most in the grade, that would be a very different list. So that just shows very clearly that bullying works. This works because of the audience. Anyone who bullies does it because there's an audience. They don't do it in secret, they don't do it hidden away from people, there's an audience. And there are different members of the audience. So the first member is the assistant. The assistant is the person who, or people, who join in after the first person started. So in my example, it was the kid who started spitting after the first one. And I'm sure you can think of many examples in your own life. The second group of people in the audience are the reinforcers. And the reinforcers are the people who laugh at what's happening, or point, or tell the story in the next hour, or the next day, or the next week, keep the story going. Those people reinforce what the person doing the bullying is doing. Then, of course, there's the bystanders, which you've heard about, at least from me, but I'm sure from many other people as well. The people who just stand around and do nothing, right? Who watch gather in a crowd. And then sometimes, if you're lucky, there are heroes in that audience. And the hero stands up to do something about it. They know it's wrong and they do something. So today is not about bullying. I use bullying as a way to get into schools. It's kind of a popular topic for people right now. Adults don't really understand what's going on. They don't know how to fix it, so they get experts in to come and talk about bullying. I am not a bullying expert. But I talk about bullying because it's a sneak way for me to get into the school. If I went into a school and said, hey, I'd like to come and talk to your kids about being a hero, they'd say, no thanks, we've got no time for you. But if I go in and say, hey, I've got a solution for bullying, they're like, oh, come on in, please. Mr. Neil wasn't like that, I have to say. You guys are lucky in that sense. But this is about beating bystander behaviour. It is this pressure that we have to do nothing. How many of you guys have ever been in a situation where you saw something that was wrong, you knew it was wrong, but you didn't do anything about it? How many? Should be everybody. If your hand's not up, it's because you're not listening or you're lying. There are pressures that keep all of us from doing the right thing. There's nothing to feel bad about. Everybody experiences it. So what is this about? It's about being a hero. This is not an easy thing. I said there's very few heroes in the audience, not this audience in particular, but audiences in general, because it's hard to do. So what is it that's actually stopping us from being a hero? What is it that made you, on that occasion that you just thought about, do nothing? Let me explain. There are a bunch of pressures, in fact, not just one thing. These pressures are real. They exist. They are sometimes social pressures that we feel. There are sometimes things in our brains that make us act a certain way. And there are ways you can get over them. But first of all, I want to tell you what they are. These are all the things that make you stand by instead of doing something. So the first one is that you have to notice a need. And there's two parts to this. There's noticing. A couple of weeks ago, there was a man in New York City standing on the platform waiting for his subway train. He ended up rescuing someone who'd fallen on the tracks. This happens frighteningly often in New York City for some reason. So he's standing there on the platform. He had his headphones in. He was looking at the ground in front of him, just waiting for the train to come. What happened is someone bumped him. And it was that got him out of his own little world. And that's the words that he used in the news afterwards. I was in my own little world. I'm sure you guys can remember times that's happened to you. It might happen to you every day. And because someone bumped him, he kind of looked up and then realized there was someone on the tracks in front of him. He jumped down and saved him. It was that easy. But if he'd never been bumped, he would not have been the guy to save this man. So you have to notice it. This happens to people in schools every day. You get to school, you look at the ground as you walk to your class or your locker and then your class. You get out of class after looking at your desk the whole time. You walk to the next class with your head down looking at the floor in front of you. If you don't look around, you're not going to notice people that need help. That seems obvious. The second part of this is noticing that there's a need. It's not always obvious when someone needs help. How many of you have ever seen someone calling someone else a name and you weren't sure whether they were joking around or being serious? It happens all the time, right? I haven't got an easy answer for you on how to work that out. But this is a problem. If you don't know that somebody needs your help, obviously you're not going to help. This happens also if there's a group of people standing around someone. So if someone's fallen and hurt themselves in the hallway here, and there's 10 people standing around looking at them, not doing anything, your brain tells you, hey, there must not be any problem, right? Because nobody else is helping. It must not be serious. So that's the first thing that keeps you from acting. If you do notice a need, there are other things that come into play. One is contradicting voices in your head. There are lots of these. One of them is that there's a potential risk for you helping someone, right? It might be, and I hear this all the time from kids, well, I'm not going to help someone who's getting bullied because then I might get bullied, right? That's a risk, that's a contradicting voice. You know the right thing to do, but your brain's saying, if I do this, something bad's going to happen to you. Another contradiction comes between rules and doing the right thing. Following the rules and doing the right thing. They sound like they're the same thing, but they're not. Sometimes there's a conflict. A few weeks ago I was at a movie, it was on a weeknight, so there were not many people around. I walked out of my movie, and there was a woman there vacuuming the floors. And I thought to myself, I wonder what she would say if I went up to her and said, I'm just going to sneak into one of these other movies, is that okay? Now I've put her in a bad position there if I do that, but there's a contradiction. She has to either follow the rules and say no, or she could say yes and feel like she's kind of cool and done something secretive. Bless you. Bless you. Bless you. And that's a contradiction. I have no idea what she would have done, but she could either follow the rules or do the right thing. Now, if you're walking down the hallway one day and you've noticed a need, someone's on the floor crying, they clearly need help. But if you stop, you're going to be late for class. What happens if you're late for class? You get in trouble in some way. Now the thing is, your brain almost always will choose to follow the rules rather than doing the right thing. We're a very scared people of breaking the rules. So a lot of times people will just walk straight past someone who clearly needs help because they have to be somewhere on time, or they have to follow this rule or that rule. The other contradiction, the third one, is that we don't like to get embarrassed. And if someone's on the floor crying, we assume that they feel embarrassed, right? And if we get involved, maybe that embarrassment's going to rub off on us. Or maybe we see someone needs help, and we worry that if we fail to help them properly, we're going to be embarrassed. Embarrassment can be a really strong motivator to do nothing. Another part that keeps you from being a hero has to do with the pecking order. I used to work at a camp close to here, Camp Coatnacunnick, I'm sure some of you have been to. I used to work at the ranch. For 3 years I worked there, and when you work with horses for 3 years, you really get to know about horses. And you see the pecking order. How many of you spend time around horses? There's a few of you. What you notice is that there are horses at the top of the pecking order, and there are horses at the bottom of the pecking order. And the horses at the top have a great life, and the horses at the bottom do not have a great life. So in our herd, we had a horse called Lucy and a horse called Voyager, and they were the king and queen. They were right up here at the top of the pecking order. And what that meant for them in their life was that they got to eat first. So when we put hay out or we put grain out, those two horses would get to eat first. And it wasn't always them just coming in and kicking people out of the way, it was other people saying, oh, hang on, there's the king and queen, we better let them in first. Same went for shelter. If there was a storm, if it was raining, they got to the shelter first, and they had the choice to let others in if they wanted to. At the other end of the pecking order, we had this horse called Pony, who was about this big, as you can tell by his name, and he was very old as well. And so he was at the bottom of the pecking order. And as such, he didn't get to eat first. In fact, he ate last every time and sometimes didn't get to eat. He would always be the one that was outside when there was a winter storm because the other horses would not let him in. So life, was pretty bad for Pony. In the middle of the pecking order were all of the other horses. And every day, they were trying to get higher up the pecking order. Whether that meant fighting with other horses, whether that meant trying to be friends with other horses, pushing other horses down the pecking order, whatever it took to get them higher up. You guys see any similarities between that and middle school? You have people at the top of the pecking order, people at the bottom of the pecking order, and everybody else scrambling, trying to be higher than they are. The reason that this is important in this idea of being a hero or being a bystander is that you are less likely to help someone the lower they are down in the pecking order. So if someone falls over there and they're hurt and they're the most popular kid in school, there's going to be people lining up to help them, right? If they're unpopular and they fall over and hurt themselves, they're less likely to get help. The same thing goes for if you see someone calling someone a name. If they've got a lot of popularity and they're high up, you're unlikely to do anything, right? Because if you say something to them, that's going to affect your life. But if they're way down at the bottom, or they're below you, whether that means you're very high or in the middle, if they're below you and calling someone else a name, it's a lot easier for you because you're not risking any social problems there. That's why the pecking order is important. The next has to do with the tribes that we belong to. Now, if I divided you up one side of the room for Michigan and one for Michigan State, you guys would start yelling at each other, getting very loud, start challenging each other. And that's all because you belong to those tribes. You feel very strongly a part of those tribes. We have lots of tribes that we belong to. Our family, our close friends, the people on our sports team or our chess team or whatever it is. We are more likely, by a long way, to help the people that are in our tribes. And equally, we're unlikely to help people who are outside of our tribes. Now this idea, or this reaction, goes back thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, to when, as humans, we started realizing we needed to take care of each other. So we started taking care of our families, making sure they survived. Then we started taking care of the people in our town or our village. And the reality is, in our brains, we are programmed to help people that look more like us and to potentially ignore people that don't look like us. This goes for skin color, it goes for the way we speak, it goes for the types of things that we say. All of those things can dictate whether we help someone. So clearly this is an important factor on whether you help when you see someone who needs it. Another very powerful one is the power of the crowd. The crowd is very good at keeping you in the crowd. And every one of you has felt this, I'm sure. You feel strange leaving the group, right? Again, this goes way back to when we were living in small tribes together. Nobody wanted to leave the tribe because it was dangerous. Now, a man named Ash did an experiment on this. He saw this pressure and he thought, I'm going to test it out. And so what he did was get a group of people together and start giving them this test. And the test was just a bunch of slides like this, where it had a line on the left and then 3 lines on the right. And you just had to say which one was the same length. So which one's the same length, guys? A, right. Now here's what the experiment was. I'm going to take these people right here at this table. I'm not going to do the experiment, don't worry. One of these people would be the test subject, the person we were testing to see about the power of the crowd. The rest of them are all on my side. And they're all going to answer whatever I tell them to answer in a secret way. So, what's your name? So Derek's the one we're testing, right? For example. So we put up, say, 10 slides in a row, and everybody gets the answers right, because they're obvious, right? Then we get up to this slide, and I start asking everybody what the right answer is. And starting over here, they start, one at a time, they start saying B. B, 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 B. And it comes around to Derek, and Derek's like, there's no way that B is the longest line there. These people must be crazy, or they must know something that I don't know, or my eyes are playing tricks on me, or something. So Derek says, B. That happened 75% of the time that this test was done. So 3 out of 4 people were so convinced by the crowd, they would change their idea on what the longest line was. That's the power of the crowd. And I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that before. You do the wrong thing because everybody else is doing it. It's a pressure. The last thing that changes the way we behave when we see someone who needs help is we move responsibility. We're very good at this. If I was to fall down on the stage here with a heart attack, most of you guys would sit right where you are for the reasons I've just talked about and these. Because you'd look around and you'd say, there's 300 people in this room, someone is going to help him. I don't need to step up yet because someone will. But what happens is the bigger the crowd gets, the stronger that force gets. So it might be much better to have a heart attack in front of one person than I would in front of 300. Another way we move responsibility is you guys might see me fall and say, well, hey, there's 20 teachers in this room. They can take care of it, right? That's their responsibility. The third way that we move responsibility, which is the worst for me, is that we blame the victim a lot of times. How many of you have heard words like this? She needs to toughen up. He needs to dress differently. She needs to stop saying those things. Or she needs to fight back. Right? Or if I was in that situation, I'd do something. Those are horrible things to say. But we do it. We blame the victim instead of doing something ourselves. So these are all the things that are keeping you from being a hero. They're keeping you quiet, keeping you inactive. But here's the thing, you guys have power. You have plenty of power. More power than anyone else in the school, any of the adults in the school. Last week, I was at a school in Troy, and the assistant principal said to me, there's a problem here that I'd like your help with. I can't fix it. So what was happening was a girl, this was a middle school, some girls were writing horrible things about another girl in the bathroom. And he said, I can't do anything about that because I can't stand in the girls' bathroom all day. And so he had absolutely zero power to change this. He could make announcements, he could tell everybody, have an assembly and say this has to stop, but you guys know that doesn't work. The power lies with you. Now, the boys in the room probably couldn't do anything about this particular problem, but the girls could, right? The girls can and should. They have the power. I want to show you a video. It's an ad from Canada as part of the government's anti-bullying program. I see this ad more as a pro-hero ad than an anti-bully ad. So I want you to pay attention to what's happening in it.
Hey guys, look, it's Little Red Riding Hood. Aw, her hair's on fire. Better call 911. Loser. There she goes again. Better watch out for the big fat wolf.
I absolutely love that ad because it shows the power that you guys have. There are various powers on display there. So it's a typical situation, right? There's a kid who's lower on the pecking order, he's younger, he looks different, got red hair. There's a group led by one guy who's making fun of him. He's got an assistant who joins in, he's got some reinforcers laughing as they walk along, and there's a picnic table full of bystanders, right? Very typical. And then the next day things change. One of those bystanders decides they're going to use their power. Now, the first is the power of symbols. Symbols can communicate things much better than our voices. So the fact that he dyed his hair red was easy. It sent the message across the playground. He didn't have to get up and talk. He didn't have to do anything. It sent the message. Symbols can be used very powerfully to change things if you want. A couple of examples, you've seen these guys before. David and Travis, who accidentally started International Pink Shirt Day. They turned up to school one day, heard a 9th grader was getting made fun of for wearing a pink polo shirt to school. To the point where these people threatened to kill him if he ever came back to school wearing pink. Now these guys, instead of doing nothing, decided to unleash a sea of pink on the school. So they got in touch with all their friends and asked them to spread the word to wear pink to school the next day as a sign, using the power of symbols to communicate that this was not okay. It then exploded. People around the world sent news crews to come and interview them. There's now an International Pink Shirt Day. It was last week on Thursday, the last Thursday of February every year. People around the world wear pink to work and to school for this same message. Another thing that I think is important about this, and all the examples I'm going to give today, is that these guys did not go to school and set up a meeting with their principal and ask to organise a Pink Shirt Day. They didn't ask permission. This was something that was non-violent, it was peaceful, it wasn't going to interrupt, it wasn't disruptive. So they don't need permission. They just needed to do it, and they did, and they changed things. Another person who used the power of symbols is Maisie Kate Miller. That's this girl here. Maisie Kate got made fun of a lot at school for her height, her weight, the way she looked. But one day she was sitting eating her lunch and some girl behind her said, "Man, didn't we stop wearing pigtails in kindergarten?" And Maisie went to turn around to say something, and the girl said, "Don't even think about it, walk away." I'm sure you guys have heard words like that before. So she did walk away. She walked away, she started crying, and she texted her mum and said, "Mum, this is what happened." And her mum said, "Just ignore those people. Stay away from them." I'm sure you guys have heard that advice before too, right? It's useless. Useless advice, because you can't hide from them, right? So she decided to do something. She went home, got on Facebook, and wrote a message about what had happened to her that day, and then asked for help. She decided to use the power of symbols and said, "Hey, can you guys tomorrow wear pigtails to school to say that we want a school of peace. We want a school where it's okay to wear what you want. It's okay to look how you want and talk about what you want." And she got a huge response to that. Comments from around the world, people supporting her, kind of started to degrade a little bit as well, where people were saying, "Yeah, let's get that girl tomorrow." That's not what Maisie wanted. So she posted another update on Facebook and said, "Hey guys, this isn't about getting back at this girl. It's not about being negative to her or whatever. This is all about peace. So if we did that, it'd be the opposite of what I'm trying to do." So she went to school the next day thinking, "Okay, I'm going to have a few people turn up, my friends, we'll be able to be the cool pigtail kids for the day, just walk around." What happened was hundreds of people turned up the next day wearing pigtails, including people she'd never spoken to before, including teachers, and including a dog, randomly, wearing pigtails. I don't know why there was a dog at school, but it was wearing pigtails. So you can see the power of symbols here. This was something easy that people could do, it was something they believed in, and it spread. And again, she didn't ask permission, she just came up with the idea, did it, and it blew up. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to work every time for everybody, but it shows you what can happen. So that's one power, the power of symbols. The other power I saw in the video, one of the other powers, was the power of real cool. Real cool is the kind of cool that you get when you don't try, when you just be who you are. A lot of people just try to get cool by whether it's the bullying that we've talked about, pushing people down the pecking order, or wearing what everyone else is wearing, or listening to the music that everyone else is listening to. And you guys know this, right? There are a few people in this room, there's probably 7 or 8 of you, that have real cool. And there's power in that, because people are attracted to real cool. I had 2 people I went to school with who had real cool, and they were the kind of people that brought music to school that nobody had ever heard of before, and by the next week, everybody was listening to. They were that kind of person. And that kid in the video with the blonde hair at the start, I think he has real cool. He's someone who doesn't care about his looks so much that he won't dye his hair red. He has enough influence that he's sitting on that picnic table and those guys stop what they're doing when they see his support. That's the power of real cool. Someone who has that is Jeremiah Anthony. That's him. Jeremiah was a 10th grader in Iowa. He was 16 months ago now. He was sitting in an assembly, 2,000 people in the gym, and there was a woman up the front who claimed that she was a bullying expert. And what she did for half an hour was talk about all of her experiences with bullying. The thing is, Jeremiah and apparently no one else in the room believed her. She thought that she was just making them up because they were outrageous. So it came after half an hour that she decided she was going to share her wisdom with the crowd. And she said, "Do you guys want to know how to stop bullying?" And they were all like, "Finally, tell us something." She said, "Don't be a bully." That was her advice. And they laughed her, literally laughed her out of the room. Because it's ridiculous advice, right? Jeremiah walked out of there though and thought, there must be something I can do or we can do to change this. And he remembered back to first grade where one of his teachers had said, people who bully are people who have low self-esteem, generally. So Jeremiah thought, well, what if I just increase everybody's self-esteem? Which seems a bit simplistic, right? How could you possibly do that for everyone in the school? Well, he decided to start a Twitter account called West High Bros, and all that account did was post compliments. And it worked. Now remember, he was in 10th grade, and if you know, and you do know a lot about high school, 10th graders do not have any influence in high school, right? But he did because he had real cool. He didn't worry about what other people thought of him. He just started doing it. Some people made fun of him. He kept doing it anyway, and things have changed. A couple of months ago, a documentary team went to start filming him. They did a mini piece on what he was doing. 2 weeks later, the NBC Today show turned up. And here's the thing about Jeremiah's story. Again, he didn't ask for any permission. I talked to him a few weeks ago and asked him if the teachers were helping by giving him examples of people that he could tweet about. And he said, you know, I don't think any of the teachers at this school knew what I was doing until the NBC cameras turned up. He didn't ask permission. He didn't ask for help even. He just started doing it. And if you watch the documentary, if you go home tonight, have a look at the documentary on West Hyde Rose, you'll see all of these people that look like, are dressed like the most popular kids in high school, all praising Jeremiah and what he's done for the school. That's the power of real cool. The other power, the last power that I saw in that video was the power of action. That means doing something. Most of us do nothing. We have immense power in our ability to do something. And the reason it's powerful, one of the reasons, is that it shows support. You've seen stories over the last couple of years of teenagers killing themselves around the country because of bullying, even this state. It happens because those people don't feel supported. And action can communicate support. And if you watch that video carefully, you can go and check it out at home when you get home. That kid at the end has this just little smile, and you can see what that action did to him. It showed that somebody supported him. So someone I know who's been using the power of action is Ethan King. Ethan is from Michigan. When he was 10 years old, he went to Africa with his family, who were doing a building project there. And he took a soccer ball, because he's one of those kids who always has a soccer ball, loves soccer, talks about it all the time. And when he got there, he was hoping he'd find some people to play. Well, on the first day, 40 kids turned up to start playing. They loved it. They had never had a soccer ball before. Some of them had never seen a soccer ball before. The balls that they used were plastic bags wrapped up with string. Plastic bags tightened, wrapped up with string. So this was a big deal for them. Well, he played for 2 weeks, and then it was time to go home. And he thought, well, hang on, I could get a soccer ball at home when I get home. I'm just going to leave this one here. And he did. And it made a huge impact on those kids. This was something that was the best thing that had ever happened in many of their lives, which tells you a lot about the lives that they had. But his action showed support. And he went further than that. When he went home, instead of just going back to school and going to soccer training and thinking about his life here, he remembered what had happened. He remembered the reaction that he got. So he, at 10 years of age, started a non-profit called Charity Ball, which sends soccer balls around the world to people living in poverty, kids living in poverty. At 10 years old, he'd started this. I think he's 13 this year. He's running it himself. His parents aren't doing it. This is his thing. And I share this story with you because you are not too young to change the world. The power of action is available to anyone. So I've talked about all these things that are keeping you from heroism, keeping you from doing the right thing. And I've talked to you about the power that you all have, each of you. I want to talk about now how to overcome all those pressures. You can't just wake up tomorrow and say, okay, I'm a hero now. You have to practice, you have to hammer and forge yourself into a hero. Hopefully, there's 10, 12 of you in this room that are going to decide tomorrow to take this challenge on. I'm going to show you some ways you can do it. The first is to stand out. Two of those pressures I talked about at the start have to do with this, right? One is the crowd. We feel so compelled to stay in the crowd. The other was the embarrassment thing. If you don't stand out, you've got less chance of getting embarrassed, right? So I would challenge you to start doing something that's going to make people pay attention to you, maybe laugh at you, make fun of you. If you do that, you're going to feel more comfortable when the time comes to help somebody. For example, you could wear orange pants in front of a big crowd and risk getting made fun of. My wardrobe at home consists only of jeans, white t-shirts, grey t-shirts, and black t-shirts. 2 weekends ago, my daughter said, "You're really boring." She's 3. I tell you that because I want you to know how uncomfortable I am wearing orange pants. This is not just I'm some cool guy who wears orange pants. I'm boring. And so when I wear orange pants, it makes me uncomfortable. And every time I come in front of an audience, it makes me uncomfortable because people point at it. Sometimes they say cool pants, sometimes they say you're insane. But the point is, I am now used to that feeling. So when somebody needs my help and I'm in a group, I'm going to be more comfortable to step outside of the group. Now, it could be that you wear a silly hat to school. That's probably not as big of a deal today as it is in other days. It could be that you go to the mall and walk around backwards for half an hour. Just do something that's going to make people pay attention to you and maybe laugh at you, maybe point at you. If you start doing that, you're going to be more ready. Another thing you can do is to question the rules. Now, when I say question the rules, I don't mean break the rules, like take a photo of a no photography sign. I mean question those rules that are creating those contradictions in your head. So I gave you an example of one at the start. Being late to class, right? You need to be at class on time or you get into trouble, right? You need to go to your teachers today, next week, and say, is it okay if I turn up to class late if I'm helping someone, if someone needs me? By doing that, now, they're probably going to say yes. I hope they're going to say yes. In doing that, it's going to trigger something in your brain. It's going to sit there, and you're not going to think about it for days, for weeks, for months. And then one day, you're going to have that situation where you need to help somebody or you'll be late. Or if you help somebody, you'll be late. And you're going to remember. It just takes that, getting that initial permission. So question the rules that you think might get in the way. And I don't mean break the rules. I don't mean punch someone in the face when you hear them calling your name. Another thing you can do is to find more tribes. I said our tribes are very important in whether we do something or not, and the people that we help. So find some people that are not in your tribe now, and make a tribe. Now, one way you could do this, any of you could ask your teacher for 5 minutes in a class today or next week, and say, I've got an activity I want to run. And so what you do is say, okay, we've got 4 corners of the room here, and you could do this a couple of times with different subjects, but we might use superheroes. So what I would say is, okay, go to the corner where your favourite superhero is. So it might be Superman over there, Batman over there, Spider-Man over there, and Wonder Woman over there. And when you do that, you've got 3 minutes to talk about why you're standing in that corner. Why is that hero the one that you chose? And what's going to happen is you've just built a tribe. And this might seem ridiculous, but again, this is putting something into your brain, because when you walk down the hallway and you see someone on the floor crying that maybe 2 days ago was a stranger, but now is part of the Spider-Man tribe, you're more likely to help them. You're going to remember, hey, that's that girl that knows more about Spider-Man than I do. And that connection, that tribal membership is going to make it easier for you to help. So find new tribes. The other thing that you can do is to remove the reward from bullying, from negative behaviour. At the start I said bullying works, and it works because it's rewarded. It works because people laugh, or people stand around and watch. If you can remove those things, there'll be no reason to actually do this bullying stuff. If you remove the reward, those kids are not going to go up the pecking order. They're going to go down the pecking order. In a school where that is happening, where the rewards have been removed, people are going to have to do nice things to go up the pecking order. Imagine being popular because you did nice things. The last thing that you can do is to build a team. Every hero that's ever been has a team, or had a team. Everyone. All of those people that I talked to you about before, Ethan has a team. He's got a group of people helping him with charity ball now. Jeremiah started by himself, and now he's got a team of 10 people helping, and people around the world tweeting him support. All those people had teams. find somebody who will join you in what you're doing. It might not be in your small group of friends. It might have to be someone outside of that group. But find a team. This, what I've asked you to do or think about, is hard. It's hard because you're going to fail. It's hard because it's scary. But do it anyway. Do it because you will eventually have success. Because people will join in and because you will change things. Change the world. Whether that's the whole world, whether that's your room, whether that's your town, whatever it is. Do it anyway. Now it's easy for me to say, if you start it, people will follow. And I'm sure you've heard that idea before. And it's pretty hard to believe sometimes. You think, yeah, I could start wearing a pink shirt to school every day or something, but people are going to laugh at me, nobody's going to join in. If I start a pigtail group, nobody's going to turn up to school with pigtails. The next day it'll be just me. But here's what happens. I'm going to show you this in the real world. When you start doing something and you do it with all of your effort and you're loving it, people are going to join in. So this video I'm going to show was at a music festival, completely unstaged. It's one guy acting like he's by himself, dancing like a maniac, and everybody's watching. The important thing to note is that this guy's been dancing for half an hour before I start the video. Okay, so he's been dancing, people are laughing at him, people are taking video of him.
Turn that frown upside down.
So then somebody else joins in, right? And neither of them are good dancers. You guys are all laughing at them because you're sitting here in a cafeteria thinking, there's no way I'd get up and dance in front of this crowd by myself. But when a second person joins in, things change. Now everybody's still looking at them like they're crazy people, and they're really not good at dancing. But when you've got two, the third person might turn up. And this third person has got some moves.
That's me right there.
But I want you to count the seconds between the third person arriving and the next group. Bam. 10 seconds it took to go from 3 to 5. Another 10 seconds, we've got 10. And look at how quickly people are joining in. Now, these people who are joining in are still people who are generally okay with dancing like a lunatic. But soon, it becomes cooler to be in this crowd of dancing lunatics than it does to be sitting on the grass by yourself. Soon, people are running from across the other side of the hill to join in. Just because one person started. And now you can't even see that first guy. Can't even see him. These people that are joining in now, they didn't know about this first guy. They're joining because there's a group of people doing it. And look how far they're running from across the hill. So that's what it's about. It's about starting something by yourself that you're doing with passion, with excitement, and just not caring about what everyone else is doing. People are going to join in. Those guys inside the pink shirt, they have this international program on their hands now, but there are some people who are doing it. There are some schools that are running pink shirt days that have never heard the story of David and Travis. So the movement became bigger than them. And you, in this room right now, any of you could start that, if that's what you wanted to do. So I encourage you to start practicing to be a hero, start practicing to get past all of those pressures that keep you from being a hero. Thanks, guys.